Well, hello and welcome to this session of ExecuNet Masterclass. I'm your host, Tony Vlahos, and my guest this hour is Mr. Paul Stefanik. He's the managing director of the award-winning Retained Executive Search and Talent Solutions organization, JBK Associates International. Now, as anyone who's ever looked for a new job will tell you, it can be really tough to stand out from the crowd. And today, Paul will draw from his 25 plus years of senior level experience to show you what you need to do to stand out and be seen by employers as the obvious person to interview. Really important stuff, and part of our daily commitment here at ExecuNet to connect with trusted advisors like Paul who can help you create the transformative results you want in your career, at work, and in your everyday life. So let's begin at the beginning with a few housekeeping things that will make your experience today all the more enjoyable and valuable. First, by now you should have received the PowerPoint deck for today's session. Many of you are nodding. Yes, I can tell. That's great. If you're sure you have not, fear not. You can get the slides in PDF straight from the screen in front of you. Just look under the handout section on your right. And if you have any trouble, of course, chat to us and my amazing colleague Kim will help you out. Second, do not be shy. If you'd like to ask Paul questions, and I certainly encourage you to do that, you can chat those in, and I'll do my best to relay as many as possible to him before the end of the session. Lastly, very important, please complete your evaluation before you go. I know that Paul values your feedback, and Kim and I do too. It really does help us serve you better. Well, I am really happy to bring on today's guest. During his 25 years in executive search, Paul Stefanik has helped drive transformational growth for global industry leaders, venture-backed startups, and other companies by placing candidates across the C-suite, board of directors, and VP levels. He's got deep expertise in many industries, including manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, food, facility services, and technology. Paul has held senior level positions with four executive recruiting firms. He serves on the boards of two technology startups, and he has spoken at industry conferences and at Case Western University. He's a friend of ExecuNet. I am so proud to welcome him back to the ExecuNet stage. With that, Paul, they are all yours.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Kim. Wanted to just reach out, say hello to everyone, and echo what Tony said earlier. During this presentation, please feel free to type your comments, your questions in, and right during that slide, if Tony can get his question in over my speaking, I encourage him to make them relevant questions, pertinent, and we will address them as need be. So let's just move this along. Here's the agenda that we're going to talk about. So what do you need to do to stand out? What do you need to do to communicate effectively? How will you increase your chances of being hunted? How to create first impressions, how you differentiate yourself, and how you build a better relationship with recruiters. So during this, if someone wants something else discussed, chat it in, and I'll even address it verbally. But that's the topic. No laughing now at the picture. It's unfortunately fairly recent. I won't spend much time on this slide because he'd get a nice overview for you. So what do you need to do to stand out? Well, yeah, you need to be found. And I've heard people ask me, God, at least 5 years ago, are you a keyword? And I said 5 years ago, you are. We're one of 500 million people on LinkedIn. No one knows your name. They don't know my name. They just look for keywords. Even if they're your closest friend, you won't know to look for them. Our clients don't say, I only want people who have these titles from these companies. When we build the LinkedIn profiles, we typically say, oh, it's okay. I'm just going to put my company, my title, and the dates in there, and I'm going to move on. And again, the only reason why you probably entered LinkedIn was to be found. But you won't be found because they don't know your name. So just remember that. So then you sit there and ask yourself, what keywords should I be found by? And I always tell people, think in groups of 4 words all the time. And you're sitting there going, I don't know what 4 keywords need to be found. Well, Google's a strong tool. What I would do is I would spend 15 minutes just Googling the job description that you want. VP of this, director of that, CXO of whatever. That job spec is out there. Read it, reread it. I don't care if you print it, highlight it, and then look at those words, and do those words truly align to your background? If they do, you need to edit your LinkedIn profile. Because if you want to be found for that type of job, make sure it's not, your resume doesn't exist yet unless you've literally copied and pasted each section in LinkedIn. I do not recommend putting your resume as an image on it. You can. It's not something I recommend for different reasons. We won't go into that, but understand again that those keywords are indicative of what's going to find you. So, how do you strengthen your position on a candidate slate? That's something that you may not have all the control over that you think, but people look for boxes. What box do you fit in? And believe me, the recruiter's the messenger. So we get told, this is $1 billion P&L. We need someone who's had close to that, if not larger, because we're currently $1 billion. We want to become 2 or 3 billion by X time. So they look for that experience base of what you had for revenue, staff size, how long have you been leading leaders. Um, Comp is a whole separate issue now. And most executive search firms are not even asking you what's your comp package. They're stating it as what's your expectations. That could be a whole presentation unto its own, but something that you need to consider. I can tell you probably, or won't play into this description, how to best handle that, but that there's a typical alignment there. How do you help yourself still? Build the relationship with the recruiter, the consultant. There's a whole slide about that alone. And your references can help you. References to get the recruiter, references behind in your world. And a lot of executive recruiters use a combination of their network and see who you're connected to. So before you connect and accept with that LinkedIn with that recruiter, just realize that they're going to do some checking. It does occur. It may not be what you expect, but I'm just telling you, it does occur.
Paul, it's Tony.
Yes.
So we've got our first batch of questions. No
Mm-hmm.
surprise. Help us understand, please, when you say always think in groups of 4 words, what that really means to an executive candidate as well as to a recruiter.
Great question. Let me expound. So if I need a VP of sales, but I need someone who's coming from experience in e-commerce, mobile commerce, global, and what other keyword that would align to that specific need. That's what I mean. We're under a LinkedIn recruiter, and I don't expect anyone on this call to have it, but they might. It is a bunch of search filters. It is long, it is deep. You can filter everything. And then there's a keyword section. And that's what they typically type in, is up to about 4 keywords. And it's just those keywords that relate to a job description. So the reason I said it's typically 4, it's the start, because then you get back a search query of 600,000. Then you've got to put in more queries to reduce it. But those 4 keywords align to what they typically, most recruiters type in the keyword section.
Okay, let's take a follow-up question about keywords themselves. Sometimes it's difficult for us, the ones who are looking for work, to distinguish between compelling, really great, relevant keywords and the stuff that sounds really good but is rather generic. And we're wondering which one should we go with? I know it's not a one size fits all answer, but could you shed a little bit more light on that for us?
Sure. And again, it's going to totally align with the job spec. The keywords in that spec give you the answer.
Mhm.
The trick I tell top candidates is, don't ever just submit your resume. And it's the first thing you want to do. It's the easiest thing. Don't ask to send the job spec to you first. Why? Because it's okay to edit your resume and align it to that job spec, because sometimes the person you're dealing with only looks for keyword alignment versus interpreting the resume correctly. So I can't say you need entrepreneur and all these other words. It depends on what's in that job spec that relates to your resume.
Okay, let's move on. I'll save more questions for a bit.
Sure.
Thanks.
So during the search process, what's your role? Some of these appear obvious, but you'd be surprised in 25 years of some of the challenges with this. So one thing, open. Have a really open conversation with the recruiter. Follow up with them. If you don't follow up, they may not follow up with you when it's time. Do the thank you notes within 24 hours, and as fast and as easy as and simple as it is to do an email, think about standing out. Who writes handwrittens? And I'll bet you a certain small single digit percent of you do. I'm going to encourage you to do that. Is it always easy to find their no, but can you? Yeah, you can call into a main line of a corporation. You don't even have to, if you're not going through an executive recruiter, by the way, ask for the address, make sure that you have that, and send a handwritten thank you if you're not able to ascertain a business card from them. Absolutely important. Um, when you're dealing with the recruiter, ask about additional, and oh, by the way, tell them about any additional opportunities you have in process. Again, be open. We expect you to have more than one opportunity. And it's the smart recruiters don't ask who exactly it is. We don't care. We just care about where you are in the process. We use that information to tell our client, the hiring company, that, hey, John Smith here is in second or third round interviews. If we have an interest, we should elevate their stature, or if we can't change the process, we need to inform them to manage their expectations. So understand that happens. Be prepared. Um, have questions for each person that you're interviewing with. I encourage you to type them out, be that organized, put those questions in order of importance. I will tell you the advice I've given top CEOs who have hired me is to say, write down the first 3 questions the candidate asks you. You will figure out a trajectory of how they think based upon the questions they ask. You may only get 1 question or 3 questions or 5, but those questions provide us the intellect, your intellectual curiosity, how you think. That's critically important. So you better gone in, and when you're prepared, have you assessed the company? Have you looked at the competitors? Have you looked at the consistency of the management team and the board? Understand it. That way, in case you're eyeball to eyeball, they're seeing how organized you are, and you're prepared, because you actually want to ask them questions associated with what differentiates them and why do they lose, of questions, and understand who their key competitors are. Being prepared, I always set Google alerts. If my client is ABC Company, I set a Google alert for them. It's free, it's simple. I set a Google alert for the hiring manager name, John Smith at ABC Company. So, which can be a challenge for something like that, but you'd be surprised on the news articles that get forwarded to you in case they're in the news, they get quoted, whatever happens, you're now, it's being fed to you versus you looking for it and being prepared. So that's hopefully helpful.
Hey, Paul,
Yes.
before we leave the previous slide, on the subject of thank you notes,
Mhm.
unpack that for us. It could be just as simple as thank you, or is the recruiter looking for something additional that we should be sensitive to when we're sending one?
So we all get thank you notes. I'm going to say 90+% of mine, I'm going to say 95 are always emailed because it's simple, it's fast. Um, what we look for is their honesty, their types of communication. We do look for speed, and if you're doing a handwritten, I'm going to say even in addition to the electronic, I don't know about you, but when I get a letter, typically in a smaller envelope, it's like, wonder who sent me this. You know, you've got my attention. So it does set a differentiation piece. Again, echoing back, how do you stand out?
Hmm.
So that's I'm just not looking for, the typical really appreciate your time and consideration. Look forward to staying in touch with you. I've probably
Right.
read that every bit of 1,000 times.
Right.
But you are looking for someone who really wants to build a relationship, and not every executive recruiter is receptive to that,
Hmm.
but the ones who are in the industry and plan on being in there for a long time, that's the industry we're in, is a relationship business. That's all this industry is, guys.
And I'm guessing as well, Paul, that if you're the recruiter reading a thank you note, you don't want to be treated as a human ATS, right? You don't want to be overloaded with keywords in a thank you note just to make sure you don't forget what I stand for. Am I correct in that assumption?
Absolutely.
All right.
The thank you note is not a keyword dump area. Thank you
Great.
for clarifying.
All right. Let's go on. Thanks.
Sure. Um, so going off on some of that, are your emails concise and to the point and professional? You would be surprised what we see. Um, just remember, address the point. The phone conversation. This is one of the pet peeves of many, inclusive of mine. Long-winded answers. If it takes you more than 2 minutes to tell me the answer to my question, it's going to be a concern. Our clients who are at the C-suite or board, the higher you go, the shorter their attention spans. So keep your answers direct, to the point. Support it with your story later. Don't tell the story to get to the answer. That will only concern the interviewer, the recruiter, or even if you went right to the hiring manager. And of course, I always say this, be ready. And if someone says, give me three reasons why you're the ideal candidate, be ready. And again, your answer should align with the job spec. And that spec is critical. I'm telling you to take the time. If you're face to face with someone, eye contact, body language, you can't control, but it is critical. If you have a problem with eye contact, they're going to put a mental note down or physically write on paper somewhere, bad eye contact, and that sends a different message. There's probably outstanding people to talk about body language. There's great books out there, but sometimes you can't control it. I would just say try to be aware of it. It does send messages. If you're um, stretching the truth, your body language gives it away.
Paul,
Yes.
let's dial back to the previous. There you go. So on that topic of be ready, 3 reasons why you're the ideal candidate. The chats I'm getting goes something like this. How much research should I do so that when I'm talking about myself as the ideal candidate, I'm actually able to distinguish myself from the competition? That's a tough thing, but it seems like it could be very beneficial to do a compare and contrast with others who might be applying for the same position and who might be speaking to the same recruiter. What's your advice on that one?
This is a great point. It also relates to sometimes when you reach out to a posting, maybe by an executive search firm, rare, or if you're just reaching out unsolicited email to the recruiter about a job you heard about, someone sent you the job spec, and how do those 3 reasons? I always tell people to pretty much copy and paste the requirement section, the first 3 bullets, because I'm going to beat us up a little bit as in the industry. We don't want to do that much work. And you can't let us think. You have to tell us where you align to the job spec and how you're the ideal candidate. And that cover note or even that follow up or that face to face interview, you have to know and I push my clients on this. What are the top 3 things this person has to accomplish in the first year to know they're successful? And you have to align yourself to the requirements and or that specific point, how you've met, exceed to those. Just be ready and say, oh, they're looking for 15 plus years in this industry. I've got 18, I've got 20, I've got 25 years of experience in this industry. I'm looking for 10 years of P&L leadership experience. I've run a P&L for 10 years, 9 years. Whatever it is, address it. Be ready for those three key reasons. And there are always the first three bullets of a job spec of requirements and even responsibilities. Those are the most important ones.
Mhm. A couple of more questions before we move on to the next part of this, Paul. First, is it common and or frowned upon for an interviewee, let's say in person, to refer to notes during the interview? Is it something that you would look at and say, well, what are you doing? Or actually look at it as a point of preparedness? What's your view of that?
My point of view, my opinion is I'm glad you're taking notes. It's showing me your interest. It wouldn't upset me. Some people want the interviewer to be comfortable with it, so they table it. Would it be okay if I take notes during this or refer to my notes? You can ask it. I'm yet to see in 25 years where someone said, no, you're not allowed to take notes.
Mhm.
So I encourage it and refer down it, your sense of organization and preparedness tell me the importance of the meeting. So that's a good thing.
Okay, one more question, then we'll move on to more. On the topic of storytelling, and you touched on this earlier, but here's the question I'm getting. Is this the right moment in time when I'm talking to a recruiter through any one of these channels to begin to storytell fit? Because we all know that that's the critical part about getting into an organization, right? Is this the moment in time to do that, or is that not the right thing to do at this moment?
The old saying, facts tell, stories sell.
Mhm.
So it is, but answer the question and ask, I'd love to share a story with you. And if you preface it, and if they say, I'd love to hear it, but I can't right now, we've got to keep the interview, that's fine. If they're looking forward to hearing it, you'll see their eyebrows raise and their body position change. Tell the story, but keep it on point, but keep it engaging. So stories are critical.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Sure. How do you increase your chances of being hunted? And it still does come back to keywords, but are you out there? Are you on Hoovers and Zoom info? And there are ways to log in and validate your own information. Find it. Spend the time on yourself to make sure it's valid information, especially if you have a common last name of Williams or Jones or Smith. But if it's you, I encourage you to go and spend the time because those external data sources, we spend a lot of time looking at them. Definitely, if you're able to write articles, if you can write white papers, put your name on a white paper if you're able to. That shows more credibility. Putting yourself out there as being the intellectual. Join as many external organizations that align with you from a business and technical side, whatever it is. There's no wrong answer to those. Get out there. Yes, public speak, industry conferences. It's even if it's coming out of your own personal pocket, it could be some of the best money you invest in yourself, which is what you've heard before, I'm sure, by others. Invest in yourself. You believe in yourself, invest in yourself. Do it. Yes, LinkedIn is one of the first places we look. Google, of course, is the second to see other places we find you. Um, Everything I'm telling you is the way you have to think about, because it's just reversing the lens of how to be hunted is what we do. I'm telling you what we do to help you. How do you get in these proprietary databases? You hit a spec. Your background aligns. Get into the executive search firms. There's two. I call them two basic types. There's the big branded names firms. They're wonderful, and then there's the strong boutiques that align to industries, disciplines, whatever. Try and build a relationship with both kinds. It is important because some clients like to use the big ones. Some clients like to use the boutiques. You don't care. You just want to be found and be in their databases.
Right, Paul?
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about LinkedIn. You mentioned it as a place to publish. How much of that stuff do you personally actually get to? And when you find these posts, and of course, LinkedIn has provided technology to do that, what are you looking for in terms of length, in terms of form, anything that would help a listener today who wants to be found this way get found?
So on self-published stuff, um, you look for the relevancy of what they're published to the role that you're recruiting. So if it doesn't, it won't get really read or found. If it does, they're going to sit there and the recruiter will use it. So factual points, stuff that enlightens others, not just opinions. If you have an opinion, support it. Um, relate it to your experience. And ideally, we get hit with this all the time. Try and keep it close to a page as possible, which is tough to do because attention spans decline the higher you go.
Okay, let's also take a question, Paul, about other social media platforms. The chats I'm getting include references to Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Insta, all those places. As a recruiter, when you are looking for that perfect person, that fit, what are the kinds of things that happen in social media that actually do a slow burn on you when you hear that person's name again? Like, I wish they hadn't done that. What are some ways that executives, in particular, might be using other platforms that they should not? And I know there's some obvious things there, but from your experience, what are we missing that we should be mindful of?
I'm going to admit this openly and honestly, although I'm on Facebook and Twitter, I don't think I've posted ever in such a long time because and I was interviewed for this on a television station. If you don't want something said to your grandmother, don't say it. It doesn't ever help you. I never, I rarely search Facebook. Again, I'll use Google as a key search engine. I can refine my results. I know how to do it, but it's rare because Facebook to me, for me, and my profession is truly family friend stuff. Twitter, not always, but most of the stuff that's out there on Twitter, from that perspective, again, is typically more family friends. LinkedIn is the business professional network. That's why we go there first. I don't even have Snapchat. That then again, I'm dating myself, so I'll be the first to admit it. I've got kids who definitely live on it, but I don't.
Okay. I know we're going to get to this in more depth later, but since it was chatted now, I'm going to read you a chat verbatim. Okay. This is a hot button thing. Here we go. Quote, I've yet to meet a recruiter who will take the time to create a relationship. They're only filling positions. How do I get time with a recruiter? Love that question because it comes up a lot.
Yes, and don't don't shoot all of us, okay? I can literally tell you hundreds of people I have a real relationship with that I can text them. I'll get a text back typically within an hour or a day, depending on if they're global. And it has nothing to do with filling the job or asking them for a search. It relates to personal issues and everything else. So yes, we will cover this later, but I will absolutely bring it up now. Um, I always remind people the best conversations are two-way. If that recruiter only asks you about how you can help them, the recruiter's never going to, you don't want to build a relationship with that recruiter. If they reverse it and say, how can I help you? That's the best conversations. I don't even let my sales team go out without understanding both sides of that conversation. Because if you don't fit my role, that's fine. You don't have the interest in my role, that's fine. I will ask, what is ideal for you? And be prepared for that question. And there's always, at least I call them the four pillars. 9 times out of 10, location's critical. So we talk, are there any places you wouldn't consider or you're only considering local? Fine. Size of company. And the next point I'll say is the size of the company matters because your best success, I didn't say happiness, success relates to a certain size company you've been successful in. then you get to the actual role and the scope of that role. You have to be prepared to answer that. Let them know really what aligns to you. And then the last is always comp, and you have to be honest about that. But building a relationship with that recruiter comes to having give and take.
Okay. Let's take one more, and it's something that's missing from your list here, right? How will I increase my chances of being hunted? We see the databases, we see get noticed on LinkedIn. What's missing from your list, of course, is online job boards. Talk to us about how someone at your level seeking talent at that high level uses those job boards.
Um, I have to be honest. I can't, I rarely get allowed to post. Okay. So the clients who hire us, they say to us, why do I need you? I can post this myself. So we don't look at job boards. To be not all of us. I'm just saying, the clients I've worked with, they said if we find that you're posting, we will terminate the contract.
Mhm.
So I don't know how to build a relationship with someone on a job board because I never have had to. Um, I have clients who post the job as well as me doing the search, and they'll refer the candidates to me, and I'll either decide if I'm going to invest time with them or not to their posting. Um, but that's to answer your question with direct honesty. It's hard for us to build a relationship with people who are on the job boards because I actually don't see them.
So if your client is doing the posting, does it in fact in any way increase the executive candidate's chances of being hunted?
It does. It does because now if
Tell us how.
you're applying to that job directly to the client's posting. ABC company, the head of HR, the internal recruiter posted that job because we are their partner. We screen all. If they say we need you, we'd like you to screen this one. Yes, we screen you. Um, we present it on a slate in such the way that say these are the people we've presented, these are the people you've asked us to screen. We segregate that, and it makes it easier to understand. So you at least got coverage, and we will contact you because the client asked us. So you'll get the email and you'll get the phone call. You'll spend the interview, and it may not be the lead consultant. You may deal with a more junior recruiter, but you will get coverage and exposure that way.
Okay. I want to tie what we've been talking about with job boards to back to LinkedIn because of course it has turned into, let's face it,
Mm-hmm.
a bit of a job board. So
Yes.
when you say to us that you use it as a recruiting tool, help us understand your approach around LinkedIn and finding the right people.
So I don't go look. Well, the way I look for a candidate is pretty much what I told you before.
Mhm.
Is I'm looking for the keywords because I do have LinkedIn Recruiter, um, and with that we build projects to say I only want CEOs from these industries, this size company, blah blah blah, and that's how I drop a note either by LinkedIn Recruiter note or I can if I know their email address already because they're in my system. I'm just going to reach out. Um, I have, by the way, another thing that's going to be on someone's mind is should I alert recruiters that I'm open to job opportunities? I'm going to tell you, I don't care. I don't care if you're admitting you're open or not. I'm going to contact you if I want to reach you. Um, if you are, it's like okay, great. At least I know they are, but I'm still going to reach out to people who's not even ticked that box yet. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yep. Thank you. Let's go on. Thanks, Paul.
Sure. So, how do you maximize your efforts? So, cold calls to us, guys, it's the same as me making cold calls to our clients. No one answers their phone anymore. They just don't. They don't know the number. You get voicemail. Um, so how do you have that conversation? You've got to find someone you know through LinkedIn or any other means to say, do you guys have a relationship with this recruiter? Can you maybe bridge a gap or intro me? Highly recommend that. Absolutely. Because if someone that we know, like, and respect is referring, that carries clout. Then it's even worth more of our time. If you want to talk about a specific job, make sure that your qualifications really do align. It does. matter. If you're truly not hitting the first three bullets, I'm saying you're going to waste your time. Capabilities and experiences, we're all capable of doing everything. God gave us the brain, the mouth, the eyes, the ears, the hands, the legs. We all have it. But if you don't have the experience it requires for, you're going to invest a lot of time and get frustrated. The proverbial black hole will happen. So just realize that. And this goes back to the point we started talking about how you build that relationship. What goes around comes around. We're we're looking to initially fill that job. So by the way, the three reasons why a recruiter calls you, you're going to smile at this. We're going to try and recruit you. If you're not interested for whatever reasons, we're going to source you. And if those two, and the source meaning, do you know anyone that you can refer in confidence or open? We'll ask you, can we use your name? The third is, if you're telling us no and you're gainfully employed, we typically say we don't want strike three, so we're going to ask you for business. So just know that those are the three reasons. And that's where the help on both sides of that call occur. We need to get to know you, what's important to you. I don't want to call you for a job that doesn't relate to your interests. So that's why we have databases that say Jane is looking for a role in the Southern Florida market, no relo. She's looking for this size company, blah, blah, blah. So that's what we're looking for. And then if you can refer people, hopefully they're closely aligned. That carries clout. Can we use your name? Then we call them or we email them. We ask for their contact and off we go. First impressions. So our first call with you, that tone that we set and that you send are critical. We can't be brash, nor can you. You can't be that overconfident. You've got to be two ears in one mouth. Listen, listen, and listen. So that first impressions we make to you and you make to us are important because we all take our notes, written or typed or whatever. Your first impression via email, again, keep it short and to the point. We read way too much, and the longer it takes, the less interest we'll have. Your first interview phone screen, it all relates back to the whole point of be open, be responsive, be positive, respectful. The honesty piece, it gets read, it gets validated. What do I look for? And Tony's heard me talk about this years back. I look for intellect, passion, and integrity. The intellect comes through the intellectual curiosity, the questions you're asking me. The passion, you can't hide it. It'll come through. And the integrity, that gets validated. You could be honest. Integrity is validated, and it typically does get validated through your real references and the references you don't know we're making. That's how we validate the importance of the relationship. So if you're someone we've built a relationship with and we call you and say, we are not having this conversation, it is not being recorded, tell me about Bill Jones. That happens, by the way. It happens a lot more than you realize. And if you end up tipping the hand that you've had that conversation with Bill, you will sever about Bill, we'll sever the relationship with you. It is that type of in-depth relationship they're looking for. It's trust. We have to trust you. You have to trust us. And there's certain search firms and search consultants you can do that with, and there's ones that will never allow it to happen. You can't control it. It's their personality. But these are the things, and that's why I left the screen up so long, the simplicity, but you'd be surprised on how this doesn't happen. Patience is an issue that most of us in recruiting don't have, and we have no control over timing. Just be alerted that our clients ask us, how long does it take you to fill this role? And our typical response is, if the candidate walked in tomorrow that we presented, how long would it take you to hire them? They don't have that answer. And as much as you need to be patient, if you are employed, stay focused on your day job. These things take time. Some organizations move fast, and you can't, just be communicative. That's the best advice I have for you.
Paul?
Yes.
Great, great slide. Let's go back to it. All right, cool. So let's talk about each of these a bit because there are lots of chats and questions around them. First question is around, again, tying back to what you said earlier about the importance of those keywords. You talked about the group of four. And this might be something that is said without being said. But is this, as we look at the first call, the first email, the interview, of course, this is where you tie together that story, right, with consistency and use of keywords. Is that correct?
Yes, again, but those keywords still relate to the job spec
Hmm.
because we're only going to put the keywords in there that align. Um, because it's very focused. Search is very focused. We're hunting. We don't buckshot. We don't go in there with a shotgun. It's a high-powered rifle to say, I only want to talk. We don't want to talk to 500 people. We don't. We want to talk to the top 50, present the best five, and get it down to the last two. So that's what those keywords still relate to.
Okay. Uh, on the question of the first email, is there a particular subject that draws your attention and some that just make you want to delete it before you open it?
Uh, so that's a very good question. So again, now we're talking. It's typically that refers to a cold email.
Mhm.
Um, we have a box that we have called the unsolicited resumes. That
Okay.
doesn't mean they're bad. Yes, they do go into an unsolicited resume folder. Never recommend just sending that. I'm going to say a large percent, not all, actually hit my spam box that way because I guess the credentials behind it knows that that resume has been sent out to a lot of people. I don't know how that technology works, but my advice is don't send the resume right away. Try and see if you can get a brief dialogue, maybe email or phone with that recruiter. And again, encourage you to try and get a referral in. Um, Tony Vlahos recommended we connect.
Right.
Okay, then guess what? Your email is going to get open, and I know Tony. I respect Tony. I'm going to at least look at it and most likely respond.
Right. Good tactic. So, the first interview, right? Are there formulaic questions, things that Paul will always ask when he is doing a phone screen that we should all understand before we talk to Paul?
Yeah, so phone screens are going to relate to the job spec. As sickening as that you keep hearing it, it's the relevancy. Of course, the questions of why consider a change now? That's a standard. Um, yes, we're going to ask about sort of where you fit in the org chart because it's got to relate to this job, your experience base of years in that sector. Typically, you're going to hear about people looking for change agents. Prove the ability to drive change. Expect that question. Where did you? And even if it was this one major change, be ready to support it with impact. Say, how did that impact the business? Do whatever you can to find the data that supports the impact of that. Yes, be ready for the areas of weakness and concern and all of that. Your management style that can come up. Um, but I'd always relate it to the job spec. That's why you always ask for that spec first before you even send your resume. Even
Mhm.
if you're on the job hunt, just say I'm working on finishing it up. Can you send me the spec? I'd like to review it, but I'm sure I'll get you the resume. Give me 48 hours. Most recruiters are happy with that anyway.
Okay. So, two more questions around this point, this slide, and then we'll move on. The question of salary is one that is on a lot of people's minds, and we hear different things about this. If someone asks you, tell them or deflect. What is your personal view on that? Apparently, you asked the question and you want someone to be honest in their response, but is there a way for an executive to finesse that a bit?
Yes. And it's a new dance. This is a totally new dance with the laws that are being passed and it's state by state, city by city. But we expect it to be a standard where the recruiter or hiring company cannot ask you your compensation history.
Mhm.
So we're avoiding that. We're saying, what are your compensation expectations? My advice to you is to say, I just want to be treated equal with my peers in that role. As generic as that is, if someone else in that organization for that role, and it's a, I'm making this up, an SVP at this size institution, if their base salary is 210, whatever it is, I'm not looking for anything different.
Right.
Why? As soon as you set yourself up to say you want to be different, I'm telling you, you'll be, if you do not move that needle in the first 12 months, you will be one of the first people on the radar screen when there's tough times. That's my advice.
Good advice. One more question, then we'll go on to the next part of this, Paul. So we have had a great first call. You've opened my first email. We've had a great interview, and then suddenly radio silence. What do I make of that? What do I do? Do I freak out? Do I call you? Do I call your sister's husband? How do I stay in touch with you without freaking you out?
That's okay. We do the same thing, by the way, with our clients
Okay.
or companies we're going after. It's the same, and there's no right answer here. So the worst thing a recruiter could do is not be communicative back. If a candidate asks me for a status update, I rarely type it out on purpose. If you've made it to where I'm presenting you, I am literally going to say, when can you talk? And I'm going to tell you verbally exactly what's going on because I do not want to put anything in print that could hurt my client. So if they're, it's, you can't control that recruiter. The recruiter can't control the client. We are the messenger. The client could be putting the search on hold. They haven't responded to 3 of our emails and 2 of our phone calls, and they've paid us already. So we are the intermediary between. If we have nothing to tell you, the good recruiters tell you exactly what's going on.
Okay.
So you can't control it because we can't control it.
Understood. All right.
So on this one, this is a little bit repetitive, but it's nice to read it. Open and honest dialogue, referrals for open positions. Um, you're going to get noticed with referrals, or you're going to even provide referrals for open positions. Um, Sometimes if you recommend us for hiring companies, that will make us endeared to you. That's how you really want to get, because again, if you say follow the money comes from the client. You recommend us to a company you've went to, that carries a lot of clout. That relationship just got so deep, it's not funny. And by the way, I've had clients who've hired me that have eventually left and they've asked for my help. They've paid me to do a search. I go out of my way to help them, introduce them to key people, companies I know that they have never said they have no search for me, but I'll introduce them because they've helped me. That's what the good recruiting firms or recruiting professionals do. That's building that relationship. And again, that's on the reciprocation side. That's where we're helping you back. But that link to hiring companies is critical for us. So with that relationship, we network. We give you some insights. We recommend you may want to join this. I've talked to enough marketing executives. And again, most of my stuff that I handle is sales, marketing, digital. So it's CIOs. But in marketing, I helped my friend build the CMO club. So I said, nothing in it for me. Just go to their website, see if it makes sense. I recommend it because the CMO club, they get job specs sent to them that are only CMOs. There are other groups out there in your industry. We want to give you that networking insight. And if you can help us with some connections, that's what this is all about. This is the summary page before the questions. And I know we're right at the ends, so I won't retalk this through. I'll throw this out, leave it on the screen. Um, that's the questions page, but I'll leave that up and just say, hit Tony with any more other questions.
Well, there are already so many to get to, but please keep them coming, and we'll use the remaining 10 minutes or so of our talk to cover as many as possible. So, one thing that has come up quite a bit, I'm glad we've got time to cover this because it is a popular concern, is gaps, say in my resume, because of time off, because of dates that
Right.
might reveal my actual age, and things like that that keep the job seeker up at night. And sometimes it's something that we say want to conceal, and other times it's just a gap and it's something we just can't change or control. Do you get hung up on these things the way that executives do? And how do we, more importantly, work through these things in our conversations with you, in the interviews, our marketing collateral, our resume, all that stuff?
I personally don't, because it's called life,
Hmm.
for whatever happens. And believe me, if I tell you, I've heard it all, because we have to represent you to the client. And it's been, aging, whatever, aging parents. I had to take the time off to support them. Okay. Um, our openness and receptivity doesn't mean our client has the same openness or receptivity. Again, something we can't control. Um, that you will get asked inadvertently by recruiters or hiring companies to say, so your first job was here. Did you, and they're going to ask it in this way, did you go right from college to that job? So they're going to ask ways, the legal way around, the same way they're going to get to the same answer of your concern. My comment to you is just realize most of the executive teams of at least the Fortune 5, which are easily measured, if anyone doesn't know this, the average age doesn't start with a 3 or a 4. The average age starts with a 5 or a 6. So just because you hit that crescendo, that piece in your career, in your life, it doesn't mean the life's over.
Okay.
If you move the needle, it doesn't matter.
All right. Here's a sister question. Someone's trying to enter a different industry from where they've got proven results and developed proven expertise. What do you advise?
Ask questions. And what I mean by that is, so I'll make this up. So your background's in retail, but which is a challenge industry. So what? All of a sudden that the cannabis industry is growing, but you have no experience in cannabis, but you understand retail, and that cannabis industry is going to grow. No pun intended there. So how do I align myself to that role? And you ask the questions. What's your expectations of growth? What's this person need to accomplish in this timeline? Could say, well, the good news is I've actually seen that growth because I was with this company in this similar model over here, and I managed the growth, and then I've tell the story then. But if you ask the questions, it'll position you. Don't just, the old saying, don't sell if you don't know what you're selling to.
Mm, great
Guide
advice.
with guide with questions.
Right. All right. So let's look at a happy ending here. I've had a great interview. I want to close the deal. What's the best way for me, to the extent I control that, to follow up and make that happen for myself?
I will tell you on the stuff I can control. Several candidates, not many, and I will tell you in a handful, have asked me the question to say, listen, I think we're both on the same page. I'm interested. The alignment's there. They'll ask me this one question: what do I need to do to win? And it's a question you don't hear often. And the answer is not so cut and dry. But if they say if you don't ask for the order, you don't get it. You basically, in a different way, you're asking that question: what do I need to do to win? So just be ready for that, and be ready for them to push back and say, um, whatever that is, just ask it. If you really want this role, let them know you're really interested. If you're trying to play coy and say, that way I'll get the better offer. Again, there's some wiggle room in certain areas, but not every company has that much wiggle room. We all understand buckets. What bucket does it fit in? If it's a certain size company, they can't break those buckets.
Mhm.
So
Okay. Question about age bias in the job search. Talk to us about that. A lot of candidates feel it, it's real, and many of us believe it keeps us from getting the position that is made for us and that we're made for. Help us understand your view of this and how to navigate that tough terrain.
So I have to admit it is real, and it's not again ours. We get, and I'll never say client names ever, but yes, we've been told this is our ideal. And if you don't fit in that ideal, we're not serving our client. So you can get angry with us. We're just the messenger. We're not ruling you in or out. The best thing to talk about is when you always exceed the expectations, you're going to hear this: you're overqualified. Why does that matter? If I'm overqualified, it means I'm really qualified. But the hiring manager goes, I'm afraid that you're going to be undercomped to your prior experience, and when that phone rings in better times, you're out of here. I don't want to fill this role again. That's the stuff you need to understand is behind the scene. So why not table it? My advice is, if you're that comfortable in your ability and say, I don't want to leave, I'm actually looking for this role, I plan on being in this size company, this location, and this is my last play. Table it. Don't let that hidden agenda fester.
Mhm. Good advice. Talk to us a bit, Paul, about the resume format. We've seen different varieties. There's different pieces of advice out there on how to best format the resume, the length, and so on. What's your personal preference?
It's hard as hell to put anything on one page anymore. It's just, in
Okay.
my opinion, it's impossible. So when people send me a one pager, I'm like, this is it? Now, when it hits the third page, I, no. I'm telling you, I'm barely looking at page three, if at all. I'm just looking to say, what school did they go to? So first page is critical. It makes sure your biggest accomplishments is on page one. Um, Page two still supports page one. The older the experience, anything older than 10 years, I don't need a lot of detail. Um, Format. Well, first of all, when you do a creative search, there's no such thing as format in creative searches. However, in corporate roles, I will tell you that chronological is by far the deferred and preferred method. When it gets beyond chronological and you're trying to just show page one and I don't know where you are and what you've done, it's taking me too long to dig. I'm done. I'm like, it's work now. Page one, I have to see current company, title, tenure, and accomplishments. The single thing I'll tell people on resume is there's only two things. What are you responsible for? What'd you accomplish? Efforts I don't care about. What were you responsible for? What'd you accomplish? That's it.
Mhm.
So 2 pages ideal. If it runs over to three, just realize people aren't reading it. I've timed my clients reading resumes, people. In 25 years, it's rarely ever less than 8 seconds. It's rarely ever longer than 30 seconds where they read a resume.
Mhm.
Think
Okay,
about that.
absolutely. Let's take, I'm going to say one more and then we'll start to wrap it up. We've talked a bit about the job boards. You've helped us see what their possible role is in the search. We often, of course, at the executive level, hear about the hidden job market. Help us understand that. Is it hidden? What's hidden in there? Are the positions that we see posted now and then, in fact, real? I mean, on the public boards, help us understand its purpose to us and how we can, most important, get to those hidden jobs.
So most search firms, not all, most don't post. So their hidden job board is literally where they're sending their job spec to a group like I may have stated, the CMO Club or others, because we know that that's where these, as they say, where do they flock? So
Mhm.
we'll send it in there. Another friend of mine, I helped him with the CDO Club for digital officers. Same thing. He actually, that's one of his value adds, is he tries to find all of those hidden ones. So that's one way to them, is understanding where those key centers of influence are, and you should try and make yourself a part of it. And yes, it takes an investment. It's not the only way, but it's a good way. But
Mhm.
most top search firms do not post that job.
Okay, thank you. As we wrap this up, I want to draw your attention, everyone, to the link that Kim chatted out. We've got an expert team, and experts in understatement. It's a team of recruiters, strategists, coaches, part of ExecuNet, who are here to help you get through that search with flying colors from the beginning of the process all the way through the end. If you want to learn more about it, please follow the link and we'll be happy to talk to you about that. Paul, thank you so much for sharing your insight, for making time for us today. Thank you all, the hundreds and hundreds who tuned in and asked questions. My privilege is getting to ask your questions because I learn a whole lot just by doing that. So, Paul, any final thoughts before we officially wrap up today's ExecuNet Masterclass session?
Yes, I'd say believe in yourself, invest in yourself. Don't expect instant results. Be be professionally persistent.
Awesome. Well said. Thank you again, Paul. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing you at the next session of ExecuNet Masterclass. Bye for now.